Buddy Josh Neighbors here. It is the College Countdown on the Rogue Media Network. I want to thank you all for joining us on the show today. Make sure you all like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also now we are available on audio platforms as well. So find us in those places, like the video, sub to the channel, let us know what you all think about our question of the day. Did the College Football Playoff Committee get this thing right? That's what we're talking about, obviously, the day after the CFP is set. You all can find us on Twitter once again, at CC Podcast JN. I am at Josh Neighbors _. Glad to be with all of you all today as we break down this first 12-team CFP bracket. And that's where I want to start, obviously, on today, but talk about maybe some adjustments, some changes, precedents, all of that stuff. But let us know what you all think of our question of the day. Did the committee get this thing correct? And so let's look at it. Let's take a look at this first 12-team CFP field. All right. The 12 teams in. 1 seed, Oregon, your Big Ten champion. 2 seed is Georgia, your SEC champion. 3 seed, Boise, your Mountain West champion. Your 4 seed, Arizona State, your Big 12 champion. Your 5 seed is Texas. Your 12 seed is Clemson, your ACC champ. Then your 8-9 is Tennessee and Ohio State. Your 6-11 is SMU, Penn State. Your 7-10 is Notre Dame and Indiana. So, if you're looking at this, it's a lot easier to look at a bracket. So I encourage you all, if you're listening, to go look at one, just because a few of the things we're going to mention today do involve kind of how the bracket looks and who plays who. But I think the good thing is a couple things. Number one, when it comes to the SMU versus Bama conversation, what they got correct. So SMU, in my opinion, should be in. If they got curb stomps, it'd be a different conversation, but they didn't. At the end of the day, strength of schedule, I know Alabama's got a tough one, but SMU lost 2 games by a total of 6 points. They lost on the last play to Clemson, and they lost 18-15 to BYU earlier in the year. Both those teams they lost to ended up being 10-plus win teams. And in the case of Clemson, a conference champion, and BYU obviously had a great year. And they missed out in their conference title game, but it's because of tiebreakers. So, they were somewhat worthy. A lot of Big 12 schools were, but you kind of get the idea. For Alabama, I know the schedule was tougher, and they have that win over Georgia, which is huge, the SEC champ. But that loss to Vanderbilt hurts them because Vanderbilt was good this year, but it's 6-16. And getting beat by 21 by Oklahoma, to me, was obviously something that really did hurt them in the end. And to me, that was the big difference, is that, look, you lost 3 games, one of them being a 21-point loss to Oklahoma. And, it's hard to wipe that one off the ledger, in my opinion. And so that's why they didn't get it. And they were really inconsistent this year. And that's why I kind of made the Miami argument last week, was that at least Miami was consistent, and they had 2 close losses, not as good of teams, but they were close losses, and on a week-to-week basis, you kind of knew how Miami was going to play. Was their defense bad? Yes. Was their offense great? Yes. And maybe their ceiling was not as high as Alabama's, but Alabama's floor, to me, at times was a lot lower than Miami's was, because Miami, you kind of always knew what you were going to get. A lot of Miami games were going to be close because of the way they played. And to me, you set a precedent last year about the product as a whole. When you put Florida State, you left them out, right? What you're saying is, well, we don't think they're going to be as competitive despite their resume because they got a quarterback. And so you were kind of assessing what Florida State was as a product, right? As a entity, not really what's their resume show. And if you're going to do that, I've got no problem with you siding with a team that you think is going to play closer games, be more consistent, because it feels like a TV show. It feels like a product. That's what this is at the end of the day. And on that product front, I think we have to mention this as well, that if you put Alabama in, you set a really bad precedent about conference championship games. In the positive sense, the conference championship games should reward teams. And I actually think that they have not gone far enough in that rewarding. Because I think, to me, you should be able to pick your location, and you should be able to pick your opponent if you win a conference championship game. I think right now we're going to be trending towards a spot where Those games are going to be devalued. It felt like they were just a bit this year, but like really incentivize going for gold and trying to win that game, because you get a first round. Like, I mean, hand them all three, give them bye, give them opponent, give them location. Oregon earned the right to play in the Rose Bowl. Then they would have picked that anyway. But like Oregon would not have picked any of, this matchup. Right. I think you call Oregon before and you say, hey, here's how we're seeding them. Who do you want to play? Which game do you want the winner of? Give them Indiana, Notre Dame if they want to pick that. Give them SMU, Penn State if they want to pick that. You could do that way, or if you expand the playoff to 16, you could say, yeah, you could pick your opponent, right? If we're going to end up doing it that direction, you can pick your opponent. But I think they should even go further in that direction. If they had left SMU out, they would have basically said, hey, these conference championship games, they can really hurt you. Yeah, sure, they can help you, but they can really hurt you. And it shouldn't be that way, in my opinion, in football. I really don't think that should be the case. I like the way it is in college basketball, where conference tournaments really can only help you. And I like that. I like the opportunity in those settings to further yourself and not really hurt yourself. Now, like if you're a bubble team and you don't lose that, you lose that first game to whoever, like, yes, it can hurt you. But if you're a bubble team, like you need to win those games, and you because you've played 30 some games at that point in the season, you should kind of know who you are. You should be able to win those games. And like honestly, if you don't, like if Maryland loses to Northwestern, it keeps them out of the NCAA tournament. Like it shouldn't be at that point. You had plenty of opportunities to make your case and win your way in. So I'm there with the conference championships. Like I think that they would have set a dangerous precedent. And also by dangerous, you could have teams saying, hey, we don't even want to play. Like, let's throw games late in the season because what's the point? So you have to value those games, because you could start putting teams in bad situations late in the season where they don't feel compelled to try, or not even try as hard, And I mean, I look at this side, the top side of the bracket, like Arizona State, good team, but probably not the worst team. Maybe then Clemson's pretty close, but I mean, Ohio State, Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Clemson, Arizona State, like that's a bunch of really good defenses in that part of the bracket. That's a really tough challenge. Ohio State was number one, I think, all year long, and then they ended up being number one. Texas, we know how good their defense is. We know Clemson's got a nasty defense as well. I know SMU started moving on them late. Oregon can get moved on, but their defense has been pretty good this year. Tosh Lapoy's done a great job. Tennessee's defense has been really good. They were first in stop rate for most of the year. And ASU's defense, I know they can be hit, but they're the worst out of this group. And I mean, you've got, it's loaded on that side. So it feels like Oregon's being, not punished in some ways, but just how the bracket worked out. Happens sometimes in basketball too. But that's why I'm talking about, hey, rewarding conference championships even more. The matchups in the first round, Clemson, Texas, pretty exciting. The other thing I'll note about like where teams are ranked and whatnot, I don't love Clemson being behind SMU. I think SMU should have been number 11. I think a 5-11 matchup, 5-12 of Texas SMU is really intriguing. I like Clemson, Penn State as well, right? As a 6-11, those two teams just played. And I know Clemson's got more losses, so it's easier to justify putting them behind. I totally get that. But at the same time, they did just play head to head, and Clemson did just beat them. And Clemson was a better team for most of the game, in my opinion. So I think because of that, I would go on the side of, I think Clemson should have been higher, or should have been switched with SMU just for ranking purposes. But I don't think there's too much precedent-wise here they got wrong or incorrect. Out of all those first-round games, I think the one you have to like the most is Tennessee and Ohio State. I think it's compelling from a quarterback standpoint because those two quarterbacks have been very good at times, but also very inefficient at times. The top end for those teams is incredibly high, but they've had some sputters, some fits, and some starts this year, right? For Tennessee, the Arkansas game is an obvious one. The second half of Georgia was tough for them too. Or Ohio State, the Michigan game, clearly part of that Penn State game was fits and starts as well. And then their defense, I mean, I think the Oregon game is more just they got beat by a good team on the road, when they were on the road, rather, for Ohio State. So I don't have as many problems with that ranking as some folks might have. So, yeah, I would say I think that matchup's by far the most compelling. I think you feel pretty good about Texas and over Clemson. The issue there being, hey, can Texas convert in the red zone? That's going to be a huge part of this. Can they convert scoring opportunities? Because they didn't. Can Clemson be more aggressive? Can we get that what we saw from Cade Klubnik and company in the first half? Or will their offensive line get railroaded by what's been an awesome Texas defensive line for most of the year? For SMU, can they look like the second half SMU team against Penn State more so than the first half? And man, can that offense hum like it did against Oregon for Penn State? Because they're on the right track right now. Close game, tough, but Penn State, man, they looked really, really good on offense at least. And then Indiana and Notre Dame, is Notre Dame going to keep being the hammer that we saw the entire rest of the season past that game against NIU? And Indiana is this long layoff, not playing conference championship weekend, getting this long time. They absolutely thumped Purdue. It's kind of been a long, nice break for them. They feel like they're probably pretty healthy. Can they take that on the road to South Bend in the Battle of Indiana? And can Curt Cignetti have his team ready to play? I think it's going to be a pretty close game, actually, in my opinion, because I think the way that Cignetti and company scheme things up is always really impressive to me. So I think, I think it's that's probably a very, very good matchup, although you'd favor Notre Dame because of the way they played. So you like Tennessee, Ohio State the most? I mean, there's an argument that 3 of the 4 best teams in the country are in that Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon quadrant. And I think kind of like the draw that Georgia got, right? Their first game would be against Notre Dame or Indiana. They're going to play a Penn State or an SMU or a Boise, kind of like that draw for them as well. So you love Georgia's ability to get to the Final Four, I think, when you consider where this bracket's going. And you kind of love the fun that will come from the 3 of Ohio State, Oregon, and Tennessee. You kind of like the 3. That 3 is going to be a lot of fun. So there's that too. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. If you thought that SMU should have gotten in, should not have gotten in, let me know in the comment section below. You guys can find me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. Find the show at CC Podcast JN. All of those things. And all right, folks, we'll talk with you all tomorrow.
We are Rogue Media Sports.